The surprising thing that I see is I see a lot of financial advisors out there, and they've been so focused on growing their business that they haven't really thought about the next step.
Great, you've been doing it this way for forever, but if you want to have a succession and you want to put your client's interests first, you got to learn what is the future and what needs to change from your past to give you that best future.
What does it mean to have a different value add for my clients? What does that mean to have something in place for my Gen 2?
Preparation is absolutely key, regardless of what your timeline is.
Welcome to the Total Succession Show. I'm your host, Tyson Ray, joined by Kim Cochenour. We're glad you're here. Today's conversation just might be the nudge you need to start preparing for what's next.
Hello, and welcome back to the Total Succession Show. Today's guest is someone who knows a thing or two about the power of preparation. We're pleased to be here today with Ted Motheral, Principal M&A Partner Development at Mercer Advisors, a leading nationwide RIA and top acquirer. Ted, with others on the partner development team at Mercer Advisors, is responsible for driving the company's growth through strategic mergers and acquisitions. Before joining Mercer Advisors, Ted served as a partner at Potomac Law Group, where he focused on supporting wealth management firms in the M&A process. That's actually where we met Ted. So he's someone who really understands building a sustainable, transferable business is about planning for the future with purpose.
Yes, and if you're listening to this and you are like me, and sometimes you need repetition to finally, for me, God sometimes has got to hit me ahead with the 2x4 more than once. And so I saw Ted in a presentation at a conference, Chairman's Council conference, leaders conferences. You're kind of you're somewhat being brought in to be educated on some things. I was like, oh, that was interesting. And then a year later, I saw it again, and I started realizing, yeah, I probably really need to be doing some of this stuff. And so here, let me help you skip the double hit and take some information from Ted that might help you with this practice and this concept of succession when it comes from his expertise.
Yeah. So Ted, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great working with both of you. I'm really honored to be here. I'm excited to talk about what is a really, really important subject in the financial advisory services wealth management space today. I have a feeling we'll be able to glean a lot of knowledge for people who are listening to this. And it is it's a very important topic right now for where the M&A practice is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ted, let's get into this. So let's kind of start with the big picture. You're seeing what's happening out there in the M&A space and kind of some of those transferences that are happening. So what trends are you seeing, and what should the advisors actually be paying attention to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, what we're seeing right now is the most robust M&A market in this industry, in the history of the industry. About a decade ago, people understood that this was a great industry to invest in with the recurring revenues when a lot of people went RIA and fee-based. And now you have a lot of financial advisors who've been great at being excellent financial advisors, and they've picked their heads up and they're like, okay, now what? Do I have a Gen 2? What am I going to do with my practice in the next 5 to 10 years? How can I create the most value for my clients, my team, myself? So you're seeing a real influx in the M&A market in what we call succession planning deals. And my definition of succession planning deals are those financial advisors that are on the tail end of their careers, that are looking to transition their practices to another financial advisory services firm in order to drive value to their clients, create a legacy for themselves, and also protect their staff and their Generation 2 and their Generation 3. So what you need to pay attention to, if you're in that definition, is how to drive the most value for your firm and, most importantly, for your clients. And I think we'll get a little bit more granular into that today.
Yeah, and so what I want to share with this is that if you're listening to this and you're like, yes, I have the succession plan, especially if you are in the broker-dealer wirehouse world, One of our other podcast hosts referred to these individuals as hostages. I referred to myself as a prisoner. I felt when I left my original broker-dealer back when I was a W-2 employee, I was like Morgan Freeman walking down the beach in Shawshank Redemption, like, I'm free of the walls. But what I didn't realize is the way I had structured myself is, no, I was still underneath the broker-dealer when it came to a registration standpoint. And so, Ted, the hostages and the prisoners like myself that have now I've experienced what that freedom looks like. They don't know they're prisoners. They don't know they're hostages, but I believe share a little bit of the input of how the M&A is different in the RA space where the firm is actually registered with the SEC instead of the broker dealer custodian versus the successions that are happening inside those broker dealer oversight.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would actually take it a step further. You have a lot of firms that are leaving wirehouses and trying to be acquired, and then you have a lot of firms that are what I like to consider corporate RIAs, which means they're not their own RIAs. They're an RIA under a broker dealer. How that affects you if you're looking for a succession planning deal is it's going to affect your multiples. It's going to affect your enterprise value if you are not at least a hybrid RIA or an independent RIA. And the reason for that is a buyer is going to look at you and they're going to say, you run a great practice, but we are going to have to put certain resources towards your practice since you're a corporate RIA. You don't run your own independent RIA. So we're going to have to give our compliance. We're going to have to staff up as it relates to your practice, compliance, other financial advisors. When you take the step to be your own independent RIA, what you're telling yourself at any level is, I'm taking on that compliance. I'm taking on the resources in relation to that. So when somebody's looking at you as a target from an M&A perspective, and they're looking at your P&L statement, they realize that they don't have to put hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to affect their revenue and their EBITDA numbers to truly value your company because you've already done that at this point. So that's the big distinction from the chair that I sit in right now as it relates to value.
And so have you seen over in the last 5 years, clearly a big shift into the corporate RIA space with the M&A background that's really kind of been driving things forward?
Yeah, you've definitely seen two shifts in the industry, Kim, in the last 5 to 10 years. You've seen a lot of really sophisticated financial advisory firms leave wirehouses for one reason or another and start their own registered investment advisory firms. And then you've seen a lot of really sophisticated firms like Form Wealth that get to a certain point and say, hey, I have a great relationship with my broker dealer, but I need some more independence as to what I'm doing and what our plan is in our growth. And there are a lot of firms that like to, become their own RIA when they're 200 million in assets under management. But, the advice that I used to give when I was on the other side of the table is make sure that you can bring those costs in-house when you're finally going RIA. So you're seeing that independent shift from wirehouse to RIA and then from corporate RIA to RIA. And it's not saying that a wirehouse is not a bad place to be. And it's not saying that a corporate RIA is not a bad place to be. But if you truly want independence and autonomy and you want to gain some enterprise value as to how you're valued out in the market, being an independent RIA is a material variable to that.
So, and one of the things, if you're listening to this, from a how is it best for your clients, is one of the shifts of going to the RA side, where you're registering with the RA side, and part of your succession is the ability to finally catch up with where technology's at. Versus, I was once in a senior management meeting of a wirehouse, and when the discussion was around changing the CRM, which was the whole institution's CRM, they said, we try and change it as little as possible because we have to teach 250,000 employees how to use it. And as fast as technology is changing and the way that can be used as a productivity tool, these are things that are picked up on the RA side. But let's step back a second. So you're you're listening to this and, you're in one of probably 3 categories. You have a decade or more, you're gonna die at your desk, you're gonna keep it for forever, you don't see yourself, quote, unquote, "retiring." Uh So therefore, you still need a succession plan because if you drop dead, right?
Mhm.
You're listening to this and you're probably in that, I got 5 years-ish. I'm just turning 60. I can see I really don't think about it, but I really need to start thinking about it. And then I would call them the emergency successions where it's just like, I want to be done in the next year. We just had grandkids. My wife's wanting me to, or my spouse is wanting me to come and get out of this business. I'm just tired and hate it. Just take the pain away. How does that work for those different categories? Because they're quite different uh, in succession.
No, you're absolutely right. So just from the fact of all three categories, you need to have some semblance of a succession plan in place. If you're a sole owner, you need to have a catastrophic plan in place as to what's going to happen to your business. Because you unfortunately you just never know if and when you're going to get hit by a bus. So when you're 10 years out, you really have the ability to sit down, talk to your team, realize that if, selling to a bigger firm makes sense, and then you have a longer runway. And a lot of those instances, Tyson and Kim, that I see are really twofold. One, I want to take some hats off. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm wearing 20 different hats. I'm wearing an HR hat. I'm wearing an administrative hat. I'm wearing a compliance hat. I don't want to wear those hats anymore. And two, I want to drive more value to my clients. I'm being squeezed out of certain markets where bigger firms with better technology are just getting more opportunities. So that 10-year plan is okay, I need to partner with a bigger firm that's going to drive value to my clients and give me a strong succession plan for my team and for myself. As you compress that timeline, you need to make sure that you are fully prepared. And what I mean
Mhm.
by that, and I think we'll get into this a little bit more, is you need to make sure your corporate structure is correct. You need to make sure that you have somewhat of a plan in place from a due diligence standpoint, your corporate documents, and you need to hire a good attorney or a good investment banker or a good consultant that's going to take you in the right direction as to what you need. But in any instance, whether it's 10 years or 5 years or 1 year, you need to know that you're going to need to stay on at the end of an acquisition for at least 1 or 2 or 3 years in order to retain your clients and transition them appropriately. So you just need to be really educated. And the surprising thing that I see is I see a lot of financial advisors out there, and they've been so focused on growing their business that they haven't really thought about the next step. I believe the statistic out there is 42% of this industry is going to retire in the next decade. And I think only less than 50% of those people have what I consider a true succession plan in place.
Well, and the reason we're having this conversation and the reason you came into our lives was because we started looking at the platform and what other options were out there in the industry. And I quickly realized if I even wanted to take advantage of joining one of these other firms, my succession documents were there. My employment contracts weren't there. My ways to compensate other people in the firm weren't there. Retain them wasn't like what we had talked about and kind of agreed to. We really never rightly legalized it. So what are some examples that you've had where it went smoothly, and what are some examples where it was a catastrophe when someone walked in your door and is like, "Here, I wanna do I'm ready to do a succession plan, or I'm ready to do an acquisition."
Yeah, so
How do we bring reality to the people that don't realize they have this blind spot of their succession plan, but they say they have one?
No, that's a great question, and I'll say here at Mercer, we're always looking at fit. We're always looking at what the best. We're looking at fits and we're looking at partnerships for people who say day one, I want to drive value for my clients. It's not I want to get the biggest check that I can possibly get. It's how do I drive value for my clients? How do I drive value for my team? That's my Gen 2, my Gen 3, my entire staff. And then third is how do I drive value to the principals? For the legacy? How do we empower ourselves to continue to grow under the Mercer model? So that's how I kind of look at it. From an example of what went right and what went wrong, you know, there was a recent succession plan that we did. The individual was fully prepared. We had a full data room. We had all the information we needed up front. They had a clear plan. They had a Gen 2, and they said, this is how long I want to stay on. I want to stay on for 3 years. These are my clients. These are the things that I want. They knew exactly what they wanted. They had done their research. They knew that we were a good fit at the end of the day. And when it happened, it's not even an acquisition at that point. It's a partnership. We're partnering with that firm to drive more value to their clients, more value to their team, more value to themselves. And it was a seamless process because they had planned everything out up front. You all have known me for a while. It's the getting your ducks in a row scenario.
Yep.
You have to go out well in advance. And the successful succession plans that I've seen is you go out well in advance. You make sure your tax structure is correct. You make sure all of your due diligence is in a data room. You make sure you have certain incentive plans set up for your team. And then when you go through a process, your future partner sees how sophisticated, how prepared, how organized you are, and you have a clear path forward. The instances where I've seen a lot of problems are when you're not prepared, you haven't done that, things come up in diligence, and it either is going to materially affect the purchase price or buyers are going to walk away. And you don't know, this is the most important one. You don't know what you want. You just know that, I hear a lot of people in the space and they're just like, well, I just want to get an X multiple for my business. There are a lot more important nuances to that. Where your client's going to fit. Is it the right platform? Are you going to drive value? Do you have W-2 financial advisors? Do you have 1099 financial advisors? All of these factors and variables are going to create a successful outcome at the end of the day. So my long-winded way of saying this is preparation is absolutely key, regardless of what your timeline is. You need to take the time to prepare, to organize, and know what you want in a partner.
So, truthfully, I feel advisors are spending all of their career helping their clients prepare for their retirement, prepare for the end when their income shuts off and they actually start living the life that they've wanted. And a lot of advisors have not done that for themselves. They've not done that for their business. And so I think they all have a heart for preparation, but I think the idea of preparing for their own succession and exit is just somewhere they don't know to start. So what should advisors be doing to actually prepare for that succession? And what are some specific things they should be thinking about? Because they might not even know what does it mean to have a different value add for my clients? What does that mean to have something in place for my Gen 2? They might, because they like you said, they put their head down, they built this great business, but they've not focused on that next piece.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. That's really the first foundational step to creating the right succession plan. And the first thing that you need to do, and I feel like this is something that Tyson would say, is you only know what you know. So you got to reach out and you got to say, just like the two of you. I mean, you run a fantastic, sophisticated financial advisory services firm. You need to reach out to an expert in the space, whether that's a consultant or an attorney or a recruiter, and say, what do I need to do to start creating this plan? And then that individual should be asking the right questions about your corporate structure, about your employment documents, about your incentive plans, about your clients, about certain nuances in the space as it relates to W-2, as it relates to 1099, as it relates to your investment strategies, to start formulating a plan to organize. And then once you're organized, taking you to the next step of, okay, what is the 1 year and the 3 year and the 5 year plan here? Just like you said, Kim, you sit down with each one of your clients quarterly or monthly or semi-annually, and you lay out their entire plan. What a good professional is going to do is sit down with you and lay out your plan and look at it every 4 months or 6 months or 12 months, depending on how you want to continue to grow, depending on how you want to exit, depending on how you want to protect your team and your clients. all of those nuances can really be fleshed out by a professional in the space. So I would always recommend that somebody reach out to a really good attorney or a really good consultant to start that process.
I get the feeds in my email. I don't know how I get the junk that I get, but I get the feeds in my email of all the mergers and all the acquisitions between the wirehouses, between M&A, and, you know, 500 million here, billion, 3 billion, all these and it's just like what I feel, and this is where you can tell me I'm wrong, which you have no problem doing. Thank you very much. Need these people in my life, right? I feel like in the last 12 months or maybe even the last 2 years, it seems like the aggregators that are out there, which you are now with one, are landing just bigger and bigger and bigger deals as these firms are realizing what these multiples are worth. But yet, I believe statistically, there's only so many of those, right? It's like the Michael Kitces on a different podcast that I was talking with him on basically said that in the industry, the guy that finally reached the $100 million in assets, doing $1 million in revenue, is dying in complexity and multiple hats. But are they really candidates for these aggregators? Like, what do you do with, I believe there's probably more of them or more of the person that's 50, 60, $75 million in assets with one assistant maybe in the industry, right? Wirehouses especially. What are their opportunities? Like, what does that look like? Are the aggregators even going to entertain those? Because it seems like they're as the different people I've been talking to, it's just like you have so much time to do so many things, and it's like, is everybody going after just these bigger deals, or are these smaller, more numerous part of that 42% they're retiring? Do they have opportunity there?
No, excellent question. And the first thing I just want to clear up is that there's two different types of RIA firms. There's integrators and there's aggregators. Mercer, here at Mercer, we are an integrator, which means when we bring on a partner, because we really don't call it an acquisition, when we bring on a partner, it's an integrated process. It's an integrated investment process. We like to integrate their staff into our processes. We like to um, lay out exactly where all your staff are going to sit. We integrate you into our model. So it's assimilated. So the sign on the door may change, but we really empower each and every one of our partners to continue running their firms the way they run their firms. An aggregator works a little differently in that you get to keep your name and your image and you kind of sit under their umbrella, but only certain resources are provided and you kind of sit out on an island by yourself. The integration process allows you to be integrated into a full national model. So if you need support services for our family office services that we provide, and I biasly think that we provide the best services in the industry, um, I think it provides a lot more value at the end of the day.
We would expect that out of you, being that you joined, right? That's part of a prerequisite.
Absolutely. And to your second point, uh, what is going on with all of these deals and how can you position yourself appropriately? We're seeing deals, anywhere from 100 million in AUM all the way up to, 10 billion in AUM. And, what we're looking at, and what other firms are probably looking at as well, is you're looking at fit more than size. You're looking at fit in terms of a fiduciary who provides foundational financial planning. You're looking at somebody who's looking to grow with a national platform and a partner who truly cares about them. So, of course, the multiples and the metrics are going to change based upon your size, but the fit is still incredibly important. So, to answer your question, I think any firm is really looking at financial advisors regardless of their size. Um, just the economics are going to change. And I know what we look at is fit. Are you based in financial planning? Do you provide family office services to your clients? Do you want to provide more value to your clients? Those are the best partners that we have at the end of the day.
That's helpful because I think for you listening, you could be the 100 million dollar practice, or you could be $1 billion practice. And so there's a wide range out there. And I think fit matters a lot and culture matters a lot. And so I'm glad to hear, especially from the team at Mercer, that that's a driving value for you all. So consider the concept of multiples. We've seen data, and it's staggering what's being thrown out there from what's being paid for some of these practices. Um, do you feel that the multiples are coming from the size of the firm, preparedness in the firm? Like, I'd kind of like to hear your take on why some of those multiples are hitting the numbers that they are.
No, and that's a great question. And the question that I always get asked when I speak, and this is a little different than your question now, but I promise I'll answer your question,
I believe you.
is thanks, Kim. Is when is this market going to dry up? When are these multiples going to stop being an unprecedented level of multiples? And the answer that I usually give is I don't think anytime soon. I mean, you have tens of thousands of RIAs out there that have been formed. You have corporate RIAs, you have financial advisors, you have 42% of the industry that's going to retire in the next 10 years. It's simple microeconomics. You have an influx of demand, as you've seen in the last 5 years, from not only the large RIA firms, but other private equity firms, firms that are growing. And then you have a limited amount of what I like to call premium supply. So if you apply just simple microeconomics to that, that is going to drive multiples up in and of itself. What really determines those multiples, Kim, and I told you I'd promise I'd answer your question, is the size of your firm, the profitability of your firm, the location of your firm, how you drive value to clients, what services you provide, your Gen 2 and your Gen 3. There really is a checklist of material variables that you need to look at that is going to affect the ultimate EBITDA or revenue multiple that you would get in a transaction.
I think I had somebody else, and you can respond to this. I had somebody else answer that in the way that when the dust settles and everybody's where they are, it's going to end up being who retained the next generation from leaving, because they weren't maybe compensated like the owner of the firm, and or who has the organic growth. Because at some point, organic growth has to justify all this in the end. When all when you've aggregated everything and you've paid for everything, you rolled everything up, you created all, you squeezed all the blood out of the turnip, you got all the efficiencies there, and it's like buying and selling. The one that then buys from there, it's got to be the organic growth in the industry that will eventually continue to drive that.
That's right.
But to your point, that's 5 or probably 10 years from now for just what the aggregators are going to be able to do, or the integrators are going to be able to do.
No, you're absolutely right. A material variable to being successful, especially when you're in a succession plan, and a buyer is always going to look at this: retention. Okay, financial advisor, we realize that we're your succession plan. How long are you going to stay on? How sticky are those client relationships? How are we going to transition them? And the easiest way to transition them is you have had a Gen 2 and even a Gen 3 in place for a significant period of time, where that is an easy handoff of those clients. That's why a lot of our transactions, all of our transactions, have different economic buckets. There's a guaranteed bucket of payment, but there's also a retention payment a year or two after. And that is just from an economic standpoint to make sure that as a buyer, you are paying fair market value for what you're getting at the end of the day.
Yep.
So another major point with a succession plan is you need to make sure that your client accounts are sticky, that they are going to transition appropriately, and that you have the right team in place to make sure that you keep all of those client accounts after you ride off into the sunset.
So what makes them sticky? In a good way, like this isn't like sticky like they're trapped. What are, I have some thoughts on that, but what are you seeing, or from your side, that gives you the impression that they're sticky versus not sticky?
It's really two parameters, really. I mean, as a former lawyer, I tried. It's just by trade I overcomplicate things. This one I won't overcomplicate. It really is two things. It's the services that you're providing to the clients. If you're providing great service, financial planning, one-stop shop family office services, and there's research been done on this, there is a very small probability that they will leave because they are being provided excellent service at the end of the day across the board. The second is everyone knows that this industry is highly relational and it's all about relationships. And if that succession planning financial advisor or advisors has the right team in place, what I mean by that is whether you have a Gen 2 already in place to provide for a smooth transition, or you've gone to a firm like Mercer that has shown you that they have the capacity and the financial advisors to take on what that succession financial advisor is leaving to them, those are the two main variables of success to create sticky clients at the end of the day.
So simplified down, and then again, you can tell me if I'm wrong or right. The sticky part is you are listening to this, you are the business owner, you are the person that's looking at succession, and your clients are experiencing services that you aren't doing. If it's all you're not as sticky as you think. Secondly, on the form of relationships, if all the relationship data is in your head and you've been part of your ego is that you're the one that knows all the clients, that becomes a risk in the whole succession process of selling a practice that's in your head instead of those relationships are documented in the CRM and downloaded into other advisors or having the ability to download that information to other advisors, that also makes it sticky. So between doing it yourself and keeping the knowledge for yourself, what does that say to you, Ted? Do you agree with that as far as sticky, non-sticky, to kind of make it a little bit more tangible for people to digest?
You're absolutely right. I mean, when you are a solo practitioner and you are going through a succession planning transaction or situation or plan, keeping everything to yourself, there are going to be risks associated with that. Because if you do want to transition out of a business, who's going to take those client accounts? Who knows that information? You've been with these clients for 10, 20, 30 years. They don't know anyone else. And then all of a sudden you say, "Hey, I'm gonna, ride off into the sunset and this is your financial advisor now." That is not the right recipe for retention at the end of the day. And just like any good business, as you grow, you need to scale your practice. And the best succession plans and the best succession plan partnerships I have seen are people, whether they're smaller shops and they have one main advisor and two Gen 2s, or they're bigger shops where they have, 20 principals and then they have 50 Gen 2s and Gen 3s. They are team based, which means those clients know that there isn't just one person, and if that one person is skeen and veil, they can't get questions answered. It's a team-based environment where I know that this person does my tax planning, this person does my financial planning, this person is the CFP on my team, this person does my estates and tax work. And that's why I love being a Mercer, is because you get that client team. It's almost like a working group list of professionals that all know your situation and all know you as a client and know the different generations of your family and know every nuance. So you're absolutely right, Tyson. If you are a sole practitioner and you don't have a Gen 2 and you have all of the information, you run the risk of having a retention issue if you go through a succession planning transaction.
So I want to circle back because I'm still stuck on the integrators versus the aggregators because I lumped them all together. And so because this is normal to you and not maybe to those that are listening, and it's not to me, as I'm going, wait, I lumped them together. I'm trying to take it from my own standpoint, which is then maybe the listener's standpoint. It's like what I heard was so if you want to get rid of your headaches, you're listening to this and you're just, I don't want to do this compliance anymore. I don't want to maybe not even the portfolio management, right? I don't want to deal with the brand and the emails and texting and social media. I don't want to deal with any of that. I just want to talk to my clients. To lose or to give up that burden is to accept at an integrator platform, the brand may change. Your email address may change. It may no longer be, Tyson Ray Financial Advisors. It may become who is integrating you, and so you're gonna lose a little of your control, which is also what's driving you nuts. Different from, as I heard you say, the aggregator that is, nope, I love my brand, I love my firm, I love my email. I want to delegate these pieces. Is that the right way to look at the difference between those two?
Yeah, it is the right way to look at the difference of those two. I'd add a couple different nuances. I mean, our best partnerships as an integrator are, hey, we're wearing so many different hats. In the next chapter, in the next stage of my professional career, I'd like to focus on client development and coaching my Gen 2 and all the other hats I want to take off. And the second part is in our local area or regional area or national area, we are losing out on these particular clients. And we'd love to partner with a national firm that can help us win those clients and grow our firm. What an integrator like Mercer is going to do is we're going to bring you all in. We're going to take those hats off of you. We're going to give you access to our local team and focus on, adding to your local team if needed. We're going to help you regionally. You're going to plug into our national support system. And as an integrator, we're going to provide all of those resources for you. Along those same lines, you're going to become a Mercer a Mercer office. That doesn't mean that you lose your identity as Form Wealth. We want to empower each and every one of our offices to continue operating the way they operate because you've already shown us that you run a very sophisticated practice. We don't want to change that. We don't want to change any of your staff. If anything, what I've seen is we look at your staff and we're like, how can we put you on a greater professional trajectory? If you're interested in investments, we can put you in our CIO office. If you're interested in certain things, we have the ability and the capacity to do that. And I've seen it time and time again. So, but of course, in an integration model, you do lose your name. And there are certain integrations of our investment strategies that need to be done. But we've done research that drives value to our clients at the end of the day. An aggregator is a little different where you just kind of keep your shop under a big umbrella. And there are a number of other shops just like you under that umbrella. You're provided with certain resources, but it's not as comprehensive. And of course, I think the greatest value is being integrated into a national platform. Your clients see the value, your team sees the value, and you see the value at the end of the day. So I hope I've provided enough of a distinction between the two models.
So then one more distinction, because if you're listening to this and you're at a wirehouse, are you hearing that it'd just be like a different wirehouse if they're doing everything for me or providing all these platforms or services? So I'm just doing the financial advisor role. So I guess what's the differentiation from an integrator like Mercer to some of these broker dealers or wirehouses that as you get bigger, do you not just become the same thing you left?
Well, yeah, I mean, a wirehouse is very different in that a wirehouse, owns your clients at the end of the day. I mean, you're really working for the wirehouse. And when you work for an integrator RIA, those are your clients. You're providing clients. And also from a Mercer standpoint, and this is no offense to the wirehouses because they've been very good at what they've done for a very long time. What we differentiate ourselves in the market doing is we provide comprehensive family office services. We are truly a one-stop shop for your clients. And whether you have $50,000 to invest or $50 million to invest, you're going to be provided with, hey, I can put my tax plan in here. I could put my financial plan in here. I could put my estate and trust documents here. And I have a team where I don't have to go to 6 different places to have this stuff done. I can go to one place. I can have my quarterly meetings. And I think that is where we drive value. And that's kind of the distinction between what we do and what a really good corporate RIA does and what a really good wirehouse does. And they all do things very well, but they're all different models. And I think our model, biasly, of course, is the most comprehensive and drives the most value for clients.
Okay, so then I got one more for you because I think this is hands down the most misunderstood thing. And again, we're doing these podcasts to make sure when this book comes together, it's kind of a no dog in the fight. Here's just really good information on what is going on in the industry, how we feel you need to be thinking about it, and then what are the options that are out there. But when I think what I didn't fully understand, which is why you got involved in our legal work in your previous career and helped us fix it all, was the advisors that think they own their clients and don't, or you got kind of hybrided, right? And no, really, the advisors are owned by your rep code. You might have been selling shares in an LLC that has no value because they're assigned to your individual license,
Mhm.
which then restricts how you sell those. What your time frame of selling those is FINRA involved in that? Just the SEC? Different from the RA platform where now the firm owns those households.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about that and the mistakes you've seen advisors make in selling shares of clients when the legal entity, their S corp or their pass-through entity, actually doesn't own them because of how they're affiliated with their firm. It's tied to their license.
Yeah, yeah. So that's absolutely right. So I think the important distinction to make is a lot of financial advisors, they own all of their clients individually. And from a regulatory and compliance standpoint, especially as it relates to FINRA, if you're with a corporate RIA and you're still governed under FINRA, any commissions and fees that you take have to be paid to somebody who is licensed first and foremost. So that's why you have all of these rep codes directly to these financial advisors. And then the financial advisor can turn around if they're running a business and they can put it into whatever their active LLC is. So the big distinction that you make under that corporate RIA scenario is, what does the entity actually own? Because when you go to purchase a corporate RIA shop, that's one of the first questions and the first conditions that you need to do is that individual financial advisor needs to contribute those client accounts and the recurring revenues in relation to those client accounts to that LLC. And then those assets are purchased by the buyer for tax considerations. And you want to create the most tax efficient process as possible. So it's either one of two ways. You either purchase the client accounts directly from the individual, or they're contributed to the LLC and then they're purchased by the ultimate buyer. But that is a huge distinction, Tyson, because when you set up your own RIA, all of those client accounts are put into that RIA entity. That RIA entity is gaining value. All of your new assets are going into that RIA. They're being custodied by whoever your custodians are with that RIA. You're not being regulated by FINRA from an RIA standpoint, so you eliminate that. And FINRA is excellent on what they do when you're a corporate RIA, but you eliminate that nuance and you bring your compliance in-house as it relates to the SEC and your Form ADV and all of those filings. But that is the distinction that a lot of people don't see. And then if you take it a step further, if you look at the wirehouse structure, wirehouses and financial advisors who are looking to leave wirehouses, and I've said this before, wirehouses own those clients. You don't own those clients. And that's a really important distinction to make.
Yeah, so I learned this the hard way again through legal counsel. But in 2020, we bought a practice from a friend of mine who was $1 billion functioning practice, but wasn't their own RIA. They were in this hybrid model. And when I was buying this like satellite from them, they were originally trying to do the deal between our pass-through C corps. And it was my legal counsel from New York that knew better that was like, "No, it's gotta be through you individually." And we went back and forth, and then we literally had to educate their small town lawyers they love that's like, "No, it has to be through the individuals." And that would start becoming the eye-opening of how you sell clients when they're owned by your rep code or create a succession is entirely different than how you can do it as an RIA, which is entirely different than what you could ever do in a wirehouse. You almost have to leave the wirehouse unless you're going to sell it to the wirehouse. So those are things that if you're listening to this, who owns your clients really legally? because that matters. And that's the starting point of everything else in this conversation.
It absolutely matters. You need to know if you're a corporate RIA, if you're a hybrid, if you're an independent RIA, if you're a wirehouse, who owns your clients, because your clients drive the recurring revenues that drive the value in your firm.
Now, I'm not going to say this, but I'm going to say this, that I believe in the industry, some of these custodians, whatever they are, wirehouses or broker-dealers or a combination thereof or wannabes, are banking on most of their advisors don't know this. They give you all these options. They give you all these options to be hybrid or underneath. But at the end of the day, it's like, as long as your clients are owned by the wirehouse or owned by your rep code, there's more control over how that succession works than if you actually are fully independent as an RIA. So part of a succession plan is to decide, do I need to join an RIA to find my value and my freedom and to own my clients, or to own the equity of that practice when you go into an aggregator or an integrator? Or you just want to break off on your own and own your clients and then have other people start participating in that ownership.
Yeah. Yeah. And I won't disagree with you on this point, but I think financial advisors need to be educated as to what their options are. I don't think wirehouses, and I do not think corporate RIAs are intentionally trying to keep ownership from anyone that they're partnered with. A lot of the wirehouses and a lot of the corporate RIAs that I work with, they provide a lot of value, and a lot of financial advisors like being on their platforms for a number of reasons. But once again, I think you need to know what your options are from a structuring standpoint and an ownership standpoint, and most importantly, from a growth standpoint. What structure is going to help you drive the most value, drive the best situation for your clients, and is going to help you grow the most going forward? And that's why you need, and it was fantastic working with all of you, because you were so proactive and you asked a lot of great questions and you were ready to learn. Like I said before, a lot of financial advisors are very focused on creating plans for their clients, and they don't have that same plan for their own firm.
Well, and I think it's partially the fact that, the truth be told, and I think most financial advisors stumbled their way into success running their practice out of their pocket, and it became bigger and bigger, and so they adjusted to that. However they adjusted to that, they take on more, they hire a team, they do whatever. But because this is how I did it, and I was here, wherever here was, as a custodian or employment contracts, and so that's my norm. And it's to wake up to the fact that you don't do financial planning for a client solely looking backwards based on what has been done. You're talking about the future and what their opportunities are to the future. And the whole part of total succession is to start waking up advisors to, great, you've run it out of your hip pocket. Great, this is where you're at. Great, you've been doing it this way for forever. But if you want to have a succession and you want to put your clients' interests first, you got to learn what is the future and what needs to change from your past to give you that best future.
And honestly, this sounds very, very general and elementary, but you need a plan, and that plan needs to be updated every year. Like, what is my 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan? If I am a corporate RIA, do I want to go hybrid? What are the pros and cons of that? Do I want to go fully independent? What are the pros and cons of that? If I am of a certain size, what is my tax structure? What services do I provide? Do I need to set up a holding company? Am I an LLC taxed as a partnership, an S Corp? Am I a C Corp? How do I create the most tax efficient structure going forward to grow? How am I going to grow? Do I want to go out and be an acquirer? Do I want to go out and create and acquire succession plan firms or other firms? If I do, what exactly am I targeting? That is a comprehensive plan that you need to think about on an annual by annual basis. And that doesn't matter if you have 50 million in AUM or 50 billion in AUM. You need to have a concentrated plan to drive value to clients and continue to grow. especially in this market, in any market, really.
There it is, Ted Motheral, ladies and gentlemen.
So, Ted, what I think you really helped everyone today really wrap their heads around is you need to get someone in your corner to help you start thinking through some of these things. This isn't a decision-making process that you need to do solo. You've done a great job running your practice the way that you have, but you're going to need to put some time into it. You're going to need to get some extra resources, legal counsel. You can talk to integrators, aggregators. You could talk to just anyone in the industry who you've seen actually do this, because there's enough of that movement in the industry that you can go on your LinkedIn profile and see which of your colleagues is starting to make those changes for you to even just start those conversations. Because if you're not putting in the time, you're not getting your ducks in a row, you don't think through what this is going to be, you're only going to be in a catastrophic decision, and that can hurt you, that can hurt your team, that can hurt your clients. And that's the last thing anyone wants when you've built a great practice. And so thank you for some of those tangible things and kind of that push to do it, and giving everyone listening an opportunity to know that they can get some good movement in their practice to make some of those changes. So is there anything else you'd like to share with any the advisors listening right now? Any final thoughts?
No, really. And once again, Tyson, Kim, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed being on, really enjoyed, giving the Mercer side of things and just being generally educational about something that I am passionate about. Financial advisors need to educate themselves. They need to find people who are going to help them they help their clients have financial freedom and be in the best position they can possibly be.
Ted, thank you again for joining Tyson and I today. It was great to see you and catch up, and look forward to having you on again in the future.
Thank you so much, Kim, Tyson. The pleasure's all mine. I always enjoy talking to both of you and seeing you, and happy to help in any way that I can going forward.
Thank you. And to those tuning in, thanks for listening. We'll be back with more conversations like this soon.
I've wrestled with these things myself, and that's exactly why I created something to help you do it with less stress and more direction. My book, Total Succession, simplifies the process by breaking it down into 5 clear steps to help you exit on your terms, with confidence, full compensation, and your client's best interests at heart. You can also head to TotalSuccession.com for 1, a free guide that you can use as a starter to work through the See, Prepare, Act, Commit, Exit framework, and 2, for another freebie, my Advisor to Advisor Retirement Readiness Assessment. Remember, you only exit your business once. Create the space to make it happen. Thank you for listening. Until next time.